What is the use of signing a legend like Lewis Hamilton if the car is not up to it? The ambitious SF-25 promised a revolution in Ferrari, but are they really further than ever from the title? It all started with a promise. Ferrari not only signed Lewis Hamilton, but redesigned his future. The arrival of the 7-time world champion was held as a symbolic act of reconstruction, a declaration of intentions by the Italian team after years of ups and downs. But for that gesture to have weight, it was not enough with the name. A car had to compete for a championship. Thus was born the SF-25, a car presented as the culmination of an unprecedented technical project within Maranello. A car designed from scratch to adapt to an elite pilot, but that, with the passage of the first races, has begun to show cracks that no one in Ferrari wants to see. The SF-25 was designed as a total break with the recent past. In technical terms, it was the most drastic evolution since 2017. Ferrari abandoned its traditional pushrod suspension for a new pull-rod scheme, a more aggressive architecture that had been used successfully in Red Bull and McLaren. This change, led by Loic Serra, brought from Mercedes, had as its main objective to clean the aerodynamic flow in the front of the car. The team also decided to relocate the cockpit back, shorten the gearbox and redesign the chassis. Together, these decisions sought to build a much more efficient car in fast curves, the Achilles heel of the SF-24 during the previous season. The revolution was promising, yes, but also risky. Change so many fundamental elements of the car at the same time left Ferrari with a completely new platform and, therefore, difficult to understand. The result was a car with a higher performance roof, but with an extremely limited operational window. As Fred Vasseur explained, the car depends on a perfect tuning to work. Otherwise, tires do not enter temperature and the rhythm disappears completely. In the words of the team's own director, while the others improved half a second when assembling new compounds, Ferrari lost performance. And that is a red alarm for any engineer. The other problem of this revolution was the investment of its strengths and weaknesses. If the SF-24 was strong in slow curves but suffered in fast, the SF-25 does the opposite. This makes it unpredictable and extremely dependent on the type of circuit. On paths like Albert Park or Shanghai, where slow sections with medium-speed curves live, the car fails to maintain constant performance. The aerodynamic load in low speed disappears, and the pilots are forced to improvise to sustain the rhythm. This imbalance has made, despite the initial enthusiasm, the car manages to position itself as a real threat to McLaren or even Red Bull, which despite their own problems have shown greater consistency. All this happens while Ferrari tries to maintain the optimistic narrative. Hamilton's debut generated unprecedented media attention, and the pressure to deliver results is immense. The idea that this car was a definitive weapon for the championship has been quickly replaced by reality. SF-25 is a complicated prototype, difficult to read and with a steep learning curve for both pilots and engineers. Lewis Hamilton knew that Ferrari's challenge would not be simple, but what he didn't imagine was to face one of the most complicated cars he has piloted in his career. From the first moment he climbed to SF-25 at the shakedown in Firen, it was clear that the car had character, but also many unknowns. The experience of a world champion does not always guarantee a rapid adaptation, especially when the car responds so unpredictable to small changes in the configuration. Hamilton, accustomed to years of continuous development and stability in Mercedes, has been found in Maranello with a temperamental machine, where trust takes to arrive and errors are paid with 10th criticism. The first race in Australia was a warning. The changing conditions with threat of rain test the ability of the equipment to react, and Ferrari failed in a fundamental aspect: the strategy. Hamilton, after an injured exit in which his own partner squeezed him without intention in the first curve, was trapped in traffic and ended up adding only 1 point. The team made late decisions regarding the change of tires and that cost them unrecoverable time. It was a hard lesson for Hamilton, who also recognized that he had underestimated the difficulty of adjusting his driving style to this new technical environment. In China, the situation improved slightly, and that was where the British showed clear progress signs. The classification for the sprint was one of its best recent performances, and at times he was comfortable with the safety of someone who begins to dominate the car. However, that trust is not constant. Every weekend it implies learning again. The lack of deep knowledge of the SF-25 forces him to adjust his piloting, even imitating some Charles Leclerc techniques, such as releasing the accelerator before and stopping more progressively to maintain the minimum curve speed. Hamilton has had to put aside habits of an era in Mercedes, which demonstrates how different this new car is regarding what he has driven before. Despite those advances, the internal tension in Ferrari begins to emerge. At the start of the China Grand Prix, both cars were played in the first curve, leaving Leclerc with aerodynamic damage. Although the incident was lower, the situation revealed a lack of communication or synchronization among the pilots. Leclerc decided not to change the damaged wing so as not to lose positions, but that decision committed its rhythm and put the focus on the internal management of the team. While there is still no open conflict, the fact that two top-level pilots are competing with such an unstable car only increases the pressure in each session. The adaptation of Hamilton not only depends on the technical, but also on how its relationship with a partner who knows much better the ins and outs of the Scuderia. While the results have not been disastrous, they have not met the expectations generated by the star signing. The margin of improvement is real, but time is limited, and each Grand Prix without a clear progression questions if Ferrari is really in a position to fight for the championship this year. Hamilton's adaptation to SF-25 is underway, but the process is more arduous than anyone imagined. While Ferrari continues to find the magic formula that unlocks the true potential of the SF-25, other teams have started the season with the right foot. McLaren, in particular, has demonstrated why he was crowned Builders' Champion in 2024. His MCL39 is not only fast, but also extremely stable, something that makes it a lethal tool in any type of circuit. From Australia to China, the car has responded solid both in classification and in the race, and its two pilots, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, have managed to extract the maximum in almost all circumstances. The key to success has been an aggressive evolution and a platform that does not require a perfect configuration to function, allowing them to always compete within a safe performance window. Red Bull, on the other hand, lives a more ambiguous situation. Although Max Verstappen has managed to stay in the fight for the championship, the RB21 has shown worrying signs of instability and lack of confidence in his second pilot. The experiment with Liam Lawson turned out to be a resounding failure, with errors in classification, poor rhythm in the race and unsustainable media pressure. So serious was the situation that Red Bull decided to make a drastic change, to lower Lawson to Racing Bulls and go back to Yuki Tsunoda to the main team. This movement, beyond sports, exposes a lack of planning and an urgency to maintain the image of competitiveness. Verstappen remains the pillar, but every decision that turns around seems to be motivated more by damage control than by a clear long-term vision. In comparison, Ferrari seems to be drifting. Not due to lack of talent or resources, but because of the impossibility of translating its ambitious technical philosophy into consistent results. The SF-25 should be competing on equal terms with McLaren and Red Bull, but their ups and downs have left him behind in the fight for the championship. In a season where margins are minimal, a car that only works under ideal conditions is a great disadvantage. Not even the combined talent of Hamilton and Leclerc has been enough to mitigate the structural problems of the car, and that leaves Ferrari in an uncomfortable position. They have the ingredients, but they fail to cook the dish. What these first races have made clear is that the 2025 hierarchical order will not be a simple reflection of the previous season. McLaren has consolidated its leadership with a solid base and well-executed decisions. Red Bull tries to survive in the midst of his own turbulence. And Ferrari, despite all its history and having made a strong bet with Hamilton, still does not find the course. The question now is not whether they can improve, but if they can do it on time to stay in the fight. Ferrari has not yet said his last word this season. Despite the irregular start, within the team there is a clear conviction: the SF-25 can win races. The engineers know that they are not facing a slow car, but before an extremely sensitive one. That difference is crucial. With adequate development, small aerodynamic improvements and a better understanding of setup, the car can be transformed into a real contender. What Ferrari needs now is time, something that in Formula One is worth gold, especially when your rivals are already operating at a high level of consistency. Lewis Hamilton factor can also be decisive. Although its adaptation has been slower than expected, the seven-time world champion has demonstrated clear signs of evolution in the last careers. Its ability to adapt to new conditions is legendary, and if it manages to establish a fluid technical dialogue with Italian engineers, it can become the catalyst that transforms SF-25 into a constant threat. In addition, his presence has already raised the internal demand of the team, forcing everyone in Maranello to work with a more aggressive mentality and oriented to immediate results. The calendar can also play in favor of Ferrari. With coming circuits such as Imola, Monaco, and Spain, which traditionally adapt well to cars with good traction and mechanical balance, there is an opportunity for the team to recover land. These clues usually punish more the lack of traction than aerodynamic deficits, and if Ferrari manages to stabilize its base configuration, it could extract tactical advantages that today seem unattainable. It is not just about improving the car, but about finding scenarios where their current strengths can make a difference without depending on such a narrow performance window. However, the threat is clear. If the problems persist beyond the first half of the championship, the goal of fighting for the title could wane. The external pressure will continue to increase, the media will question each decision, and the internal environment could become tense. In that context, Vasseur's management will be fundamental. You need to keep the team together, protect your pilots from criticism, and focus on improving career. Ferrari cannot afford another season of frustration after a winter that promised glory. There is still hope, but that hope needs to translate into points, in podiums, and eventually in victories. Only in this way can they validate that the Hamilton-Ferrari project was more than a well-sold illusion. And what do you think of all this? Do you think that Ferrari can straighten the course in time, or are we witnessing another season in which promises exceed the results? Recent history has shown that having the car faster is not always enough, and that internal management, the consistency on the track, and the technical adaptation ability make the difference between the teams that fight for the championship and those that simply pursue it. I am interested in knowing your opinion. Is Hamilton in a position to take Ferrari back to the top, or the technical challenge that represents the SF-25 is bigger even for him? Will Leclerc manage to maintain his status within the team now that he shares garage with a figure of so much weight? And most importantly, can this duo really compete against a McLaren that seems unstoppable and a Red Bull that, despite its turbulence, continues to accumulate points? Leave me your comments below. Share this video if you like the analysis and subscribe to the channel.